All right. Okay, so hey everyone. I'm here with Allison, Dr. Allison Galloway. She is let's do a little intro of her first. She's a certified family nurse practitioner as well as a certified bariatric nurse, surgical assistant. She's got a lot of things going on. And a master's prepared nutritionist. She also owns her own nutritional practice in Boulder, counseling patients on healthy diet and disease management, which is high on my priority list as well. And she's also certified in bioidenticals, which we're going to talk about a little bit later to give you a little introduction about that. So welcome, Allison. I'm glad you're here.
Wonderful to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. We've been trying to do this for a while,
Yes.
but life just happened. So I'm glad that we finally made it. I'm going to have you go ahead and just kind of, if you want to just give a general idea, a little bit more about you and kind of share, what got you into this practice and what got you started on this journey.
Sure. Well, I am a nurse practitioner. And when I first moved out to Colorado in 1999, after graduating college back east, I knew I wanted to be in medicine. I had applied for med school and I had a year off between med school and college. So I decided to come play in Colorado. And I met three amazing female nurse practitioners at that time, and they were all doing bioidentical hormones before bioidentical hormones were even approved, known of, like they were totally taboo back then. And they taught me more than I could ever imagine in 1 year of my life. And I then had to go back to the East Coast for medical school. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I just want to be a nurse practitioner. So a few things happened around that time. I went to med school. I ended up leaving and coming back out here and working with them more because I just knew that's what I wanted to do. So I went and got a master's in nutrition. I went and got my nursing degree. I went and got my nurse practitioning degree and just kind of stayed with them as my gurus. So I learned so much from these three amazing females who were nurse practitioners. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I had the best teachers in the world, I think. Awesome. And there's still two of them are still around and they're kind of my mentors as well. And it's weird that now I'm old enough to be a mentor for other people. I don't know when that happened. I think I'm still 21, but
right. That's awesome though. Isn't
that's
that
right?
Yeah,
that's right.
Awesome. So, well, that's great. What a journey. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So good for you. So something just kind of that I think about a lot is in your practice, do you find that women are, when they're struggling, do they really even know exactly what's going on? So I guess from my own experience, when I started perimenopause, I didn't even know it was a thing. Like I didn't know what was happening. I was like, my body's just kind of, everything's falling apart. And being an entrepreneur, doing all the things, I was like, I feel like I'm 50 years old and I'm just barely turning 40. So like what do women come to you? Like, how does that happen?
I think it's such a disservice to us women because we talk about periods, we talk about birth control, we talk about having babies, and then like, we're done with you. Good luck, you're on your way. And women there's no education on what to expect, what we're going to go through. All we know is there's menopause and then there's before it and after it, and that's it. But there's so many changes that happen before menopause. There's so many changes happening during and so many after. So every woman that comes into me, it's kind of funny. I don't even have to really say too much. I just kind of sit there and listen, and at the end, they're like, it's just so nice to have someone actually listen to me. And I don't feel crazy because I think we all feel crazy. Mm-hmm. And typical medicine is like, oh, well, this is just the change. There's nothing you can do about it. Just deal with it. Get a fan for the hot flashes, go for a run, eat a little less, you'll lose weight, and, you'll be less aggressive and annoyed. And here, let's give Viagra to your husband so that he can have sex for longer, even though you don't want to have sex and you're dry and you're miserable. Perfect. Yeah. So, I think the biggest thing that I try to give my patients, my friends, whoever I talk to, and whoever I can talk to about hormones, I will talk to about hormones. Yeah. Just kind of reassure them that this is normal. These changes are normal. We are not crazy. And no, we don't have to just sit back and deal with it. There's so many things that we can do for it.
Yeah. I think that's what I hear with the women that I work so much is they're just frustrated because they go to see a doctor and they're like, you're fine. You're just getting older, you know, or
right.
here, let's put you on all these medicines. And then it's like, but they're not helping them.
That's
And they,
right.
again, then they leave feeling, you know, just
That's right. They put us
sad
all on
and depressed.
antidepressants and anti-anxieties, and you're like, but I'm really not crazy.
Right, right. Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So when you talk about it, how do you explain to them, you know, like if you were to say, okay, you're in perimenopause, this is what's going on, like how would you share with them, like, this is what's going on, this is why it's happening? You kind of go into
Definitely.
that a little bit.
I go to my typical, and if I had a piece of paper right now, I'd draw, and any patient of mine would laugh at me for saying that because I am a drawer totally, but I kind of draw a little graph and I say, okay, this is 30, this is 40, this is 50, this is 60. And so I kind of just break down all the hormones and what to expect with each hormone and when we expect them to change. So, I mean, I can just dive right in and say, you know, around our 30s, we make estrogen, we make progesterone, we make testosterone. We all make different amounts. None of us are exactly the same. But typically, we're making estrogen, we're making progesterone at the same exact level. The reason we do that is estrogen and progesterone staying balanced gives us our periods, those ebb and flowing. There are some women in their 30s, 20s, teens that they're not ebb and flowing nicely. They're maybe making more estrogen than they're making progesterone. So they're struggling with fibrocystic breasts, irregular periods, fibroids. I mean, there's so many things that can happen when that goes out of whack.
Why do you feel, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
jumping in here, like, why do you feel that's happening to women now as they're younger?
You know, I mean, I can come up with all my different theories. I think genetically, some people are just made that way. But I also think in the foods that we eat, there's hormones in everything. There's environmental toxins. I mean, just a little story of mine is that my son is now, oh my God, he's about to be 12 years old. And his best friend, who's exactly his age, same day, same everything, she got her period at 10 years old.
Wow.
I can't ever remember any of us. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two that got their period at 10, but I just see girls getting their periods so much earlier. Then we're thrown on birth control and we're thrown on antibiotics and we're thrown on non-organic things. And I mean, I just think our endocrine system is just so confused with what's happening these days.
Right.
So
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and there's so many things you can do for it. I mean, I have so many, it's funny, my typical patients are 40, 56 years old, and then I end up with their daughters, and then I end up with their husbands, and because everyone's all over the map with hormones.
Right.
And the typical primary care just goes, oh, put them on birth control. Like that's the answer for everything. And you're like, oh, that's not always the answer.
No, I'm finding that sometimes that even causes more problems.
Yes, exactly.
And when I find out there's women that are like in 55 and 60 and still on birth control, I'm like, you shouldn't be having a cycle, so you shouldn't be on that at all. So
the funniest story I have is I had a 57-year-old female come to me saying, I'm still getting my period. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, that stinks because who wants their period at 57?
Right.
But I was like, it's good for your bones. You have more, estrogen going on. Everything's great. And she goes, yeah, so my doctor told me to stay on my birth control pill. And I was like, wait a minute. You're on birth control? I'm like, you're not getting your period. Your birth control is making you bleed. She's like, what? She's like, my doctor just told me to stay on it because I was still getting my period. And I'm like, oh my God. She stopped her birth control and her periods just went away. Wow. So I'm just, yeah. There's so many stories I could tell you.
Oh, I'm sure. There's so many. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
so go ahead.
Yeah. So typically back to the 30s, typically we're pretty even in estrogen and progesterone. So then we hit 40. So typically what happens for women is we're making our estrogen, we're still cruising along, we're still having our periods, but our progesterone levels drop. So we no longer have that even up and down. So in our 40s is what typically is termed perimenopause. So women in their 40s start noticing all these fun things of, I can't sleep as well. I can't fall asleep as well. I have more PMS. My periods aren't every month. They're like every 3 weeks and then 5 weeks, and I'm spotting, and my periods are heavier or lighter. Just everything's kind of shifted. I'm a little more annoyed at the world. Your hormones start going out of whack. Some women will even say things like, my scalp is getting itchier, or my breasts hurt more around period time, or I have more vaginal itching. All those things start happening because we're losing that progesterone. So now we're in our 40s, we're what we call estrogen dominant. And what an estrogen dominant person is, it's breast tenderness, fibrocystic breasts. So for any woman who's had the mammogram done before, and they're like, oh, you have fibrocystic breasts. Now you have to go to an ultrasound. Now you have to go blah, blah, blah. And it turns out to be fine. But you tend to, in your 40s, because of estrogen dominance, get fibrocystic breasts. And, you know, you just start experiencing all those things. And it's because of that lack of progesterone during this time. So for women in their 40s, if they come to me, I typically give them some progesterone. It just helps smooth the edges. It helps regulate periods. And you don't necessarily need to have a prescription of estrogen. You can get estrogen low doses at Whole Foods or Pharmaca, or well, I guess Pharmaca doesn't exist anymore, but any of those kind of natural pharmacies. And it's called wild yam cream. And it's really easy. You get it, you put it on, and we talk about, you know, if you're not cycling or you're really off, you take it every day. If you're still cycling, you take it the second half of your ovulation, from ovulation to period, because that's when your progesterone is supposed to go up. So, you know, you can kind of work on easily tweaking that, or kind of just giving a little extra boost of progesterone to these women so that they don't have all the estrogen dominant traits of anger, breast tenderness, PMS, all of that kind of fun stuff that comes with it. So, and then if the wild yam cream doesn't work, then you can step up. You can step up to prescription strength progesterone. Sometimes you can get that through the local pharmacy if you have good insurance. The only thing I don't like about that is peanut based. So you have to make sure you don't have peanut allergies or sensitivities. And then you can do things like compounded sublingual progesterone, compounded cream for progesterone, simple things. Or the one thing that I find women love in their 40s, if they need birth control, because guess what, we can still get pregnant in our 40s, is I love the Mirena or the Kyleena IUDs, because that's supplying you constant progesterone without you having to remember to do anything. Because God knows in our 40s, the less we need to do, the better, because we have so many things going on at once.
Right. Yeah.
So that's typical 40s that most women struggle through. Questions on any of that? And if not, I'll go to the lovely 50s.
No, well, my one thing too, so I know the projection's dropping. Maybe this will be the next one that I'll ask. So just go ahead.
Okay. So typically women go through menopause. The average age is about 51. And it varies all over the map. I have patients that have gone into menopause at 39. I've had patients that go into menopause at 60. We're all over the place, but the average age is 51. So what is menopause? Menopause, so now, you know, you're making your estrogen, your progesterone's tanked down, but then your estrogen tanks down. That's the official menopause. There isn't really an exact blood test you can do to determine, am I in menopause? Can I not use birth control? Things like that anymore. There really isn't a decisive test you can do. The only thing you can say is, I haven't had a period for a full year. I'm in menopause. That's the only official way. And it's so frustrating because I have women come in and go, I made 6 months and then I got a period. And you're like, restart the clock again.
Right.
Keep using birth control.
Right.
So it's typically the estrogen tanks down, and that's when you stop menstruating. So what happens when you lose your estrogen is women will notice, obviously, I'm not getting my period anymore. Estrogen is what builds the blood lining in your uterus. So when you're no longer building a blood lining, you're no longer going to shed a blood lining. The other things that can happen if you have fibroids or you get headaches from estrogen, a lot of those go away because fibroids feed off estrogen. So a lot of women with fibroids and stuff are like, yes, I made it, it's over. But the other things that can happen for women when they lose their estrogen is brain fog. You know, like, why did I walk in this room again? What's your name? What's that word I was trying to find? And then the other things are vaginal dryness, especially with sex. You notice more vaginal dryness. You notice that you are itchier vaginally. Your scalp gets itchier. Your skin gets drier. You start noticing like more wrinkles in your face. Just everything starts, you know, going downhill. But the other thing that happens is women will all notice, I just gained that 5-10 pounds right in that belly region. Why did that happen? And I wish I could say, hey, let's give you some estrogen and that'll go away, but there's no easy answer to it. I read an amazing article actually that kind of tried to give a reason for why that happens. And they say that it's not necessarily because you've lost the estrogen, all of a sudden you gain the weight. It's actually fat redistribution that happens. So it's almost like our body's like, hey, I don't have estrogen. Let's put fat where men put fat. And so all of a sudden your fat mobilizes and goes to your belly, because that's where men tend to store their fat. So they call it kind of a fat redistribution that tends to happen when we lose our estrogen. So, so those are all the exciting things that you happen. The other thing when you lose your estrogen is sometimes women will say, I'm getting hot flashes during the day. So that's a typical, that's, the big thing everyone talks about is hot flashes during the day. What I find with estrogen is, when you're first losing it, it's not that simple, like one day it's there, the next day it's gone. It's one of those like, I'm not here. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. And it's like the little engine that could, like, I can make estrogen. So you'll have like a month or two where you're like, I'm great. And then you have a month or two where you're like, oh my God, open all the windows. I'm dying. And, I don't remember, who are you, by the way? And then all of a sudden, oh, I'm good again. And it's because the estrogen, you're still trying to ovulate. Your body is still trying to produce that egg so that you can get pregnant. But then finally, after a year of no periods, it's gone. Most women will notice with hot flashes that they get them during the day through the transition. And most women, if they can get through that time and it's not so bad, they notice the hot flashes tend to go away. So that's at least a positive, that I guess we kind of get used to the low estrogen. But the vaginal dryness, the brain fog, all of that, they just tend to stay. Right. The other piece with loss of estrogen is it also increases your risk of bone mineral density going down. So osteopenia, osteoporosis. One thing I say to women is get a bone density right around menopause time, because it gives you a baseline. Okay, this is where I started before I lost all my hormones. And then, as the years go by and you get bone densities, you can kind of judge, okay, I started here, this is where I am. So
I like that. That's interesting, because I've had a couple people mention that. So that's something I can let them know about to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions with that. So that's
what
I was going to ask first. So, because you talked about supplementing with progesterone when people are in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Would you ever, because I've heard this happen before, like, have you ever just given people estrogen without progesterone? I just feel like that, to me, I feel like that's not a good idea, because
well, it depends. Depends on the person.
So, yeah.
So, like I said, estrogen can build a blood lining in your uterus. That's what it does. And progesterone, when you're normally cycling, progesterone is what holds that blood lining in your second half of period. So, first half of period, first 14 days, estrogen comes in strong, builds up the blood lining. Then it's done its job, estrogen drops down around ovulation. When you ovulate, you make a follicle. That follicle then produces progesterone. So that raises up to equal the estrogen. And that progesterone is what holds that blood lining. So if you get pregnant, that progesterone stays and you hold the blood lining and the baby has a place to grow. If you are making progesterone and all this, you doesn't get fertilized, the progesterone, it dies, the follicle dies and it drops. It's that drop of progesterone that, it's horrible analogy, but it's like a plunger. All of a sudden it's like, okay, flush it out. And that's when you get your period. It's that drop of progesterone. So if you have a woman that still has a uterus and you're just giving them estrogen, but they have no progesterone in their bodies, they're going to build a blood lining, build and build and build. And then you have a woman spotting all over the place who's like 56 going like, I burnt the tampons. Why am I dealing with this? Right. Or you have the risk of that blood lining staying in the uterus. And if it's in there for a length of time, those cells can start mutating and it increases your risk of uterine cancer and things like that. Okay. So the last thing on earth anyone who's gone through menopause wants is to start bleeding again.
Right.
So with estrogen, if you have a uterus, you 100% absolutely need to take progesterone with estrogen, postmenopausal. Right. Because what that progesterone is going to do is stop that lining from building whatsoever. It's going to keep that uterus nice and clean so nothing builds in it. And sometimes it's a game. There's a lot of women that'll take estrogen and they take a little bit of progesterone, but then they're bleeding. So then it's a game of balancing. Okay, we're giving you this much estrogen, then we have to increase the progesterone to try to counterbalance it.
Right.
So I have so many women that come in bleeding with estrogen from someone else. And then it's not one size fits all. I think that's the biggest thing everyone should know. Everyone is different. Everyone belongs in a different place with their hormones. So it's a matter of trying to find that right balance of estrogen and progesterone. Now, if you have a woman that's had a hysterectomy, it makes life so much easier because they don't have a uterus. They can't
Right.
build a blood lining. So you can actually give them just estrogen. And the benefit to that is, I'm sure any woman listening has had someone say to them, hormones, you're going to get cancer, you're going to have blood clots, all of that.
Mhm.
There was a study done back in 2000 called the Women's Health Initiative, and it was with Premarin, which is pregnant horsemare urine for our estrogen, and a synthetic progesterone. And so what they did was they put women on just estrogen, they put women on estrogen progesterone, and then they put women on nothing. And they stopped the estrogen progesterone arm of the study because they found these women started getting breast cancer, stroke, blood clot. They actually kept the estrogen arm going because those women didn't have any any issues whatsoever.
Really?
So they kind of showed in that study, which was extremely flawed, but that would take me hours to explain why.
Right.
They showed with the synthetic estrogens that the higher risk of issues is the estrogen progesterone combination, not estrogen alone.
Oh,
So
interesting.
women without uteruses, like, game on.
Right,
Like,
right.
you got freedom to do what you want to do. And the estrogen progesterone women, it's a matter of, if you have breast cancer history in your family, if there's BRCA gene positive, anything like that, then there's other options for you that I'll talk about in a second.
Mhm.
Or it's a matter of weighing the risk versus benefit. Do you have any quality of life? If no, then you get your mammograms, you get checkups. We do the lowest amount of hormones needed to make you feel good.
Yeah,
So
that's what I've heard people, like, they say,
yeah,
I don't have a uterus or anything, and I have cancer in my, in my family, and I don't want to go on estrogen. I'm like, but do you feel good?
that's right. That's right. And the other thing is, there's 3 different forms of estrogen. We women can't make it easy. We have to be complex.
Right.
So we have 3 forms of estrogen. We have E1, which is called estrone, or O-N-E at the end, 1. Then we have estradiol, di for 2, that's E2. And then we have estriol, that's S-T-R-I-O-L, 3. So we have E1, E2, E3. E2 or estradiol, if anyone's on hormones or anything or birth control, estradiol is the active estrogen. That's what you see on the prescriptions that you're taking. Estriol, which is the 3rd one, is actually believed to be slightly breast protective. It has a little bit of activity, but not as strong as estradiol. And then there's estrone, that E1. We have found that estrone is actually the harmful, or the more issue causing estrogen in our bodies. And so they have found that women with high levels of estrone have higher risk of breast cancers and things like that. So you could give a woman who's had breast cancer, if they have vaginal dryness, you could give them a little estriol, which is the not active one, but has a little benefit. You can give them a cream vaginally that doesn't get systemic. You could give them just an estriol that's not as active, but may help a little bit. There's also a supplement that everyone in my office will joke, because if I could put it in the water supply, I would do so. And I think I need to start buying stock in the company. But it's called DIM, D-I-M. And what it is cruciferous vegetables in a tablet. And what they found was, probably about 20, 30 years ago, actually a doctor in Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Michael Zelig, found that there's a compound in cruciferous vegetables that help us metabolize our hormones correctly. So when mom used to say, eat your broccoli, it prevents cancer, well, it actually does. There's a compound in those cruciferous vegetables that take your estradiol, the good estrogen, or your estriol or your testosterone or whatever hormone you're making, and make sure that you're metabolizing it correctly. So it actually pushes that estrone or that E1, that bad estrogen, out of your body. it makes sure you're processing your hormones correctly. Also testosterone, which I'll talk about in a second, it also makes sure that your testosterone isn't turning into DHT, which is our bad form of testosterone. So DIM, I give it to any single person I put on hormones, any girl on birth control pill, anyone with breast cancer history, any man with prostate cancer history, even teenagers that get acne or had bad PMS. It's usually because we're not processing our hormones correctly. And that DIM product really helps to process those hormones. So like I said, put it in the water supply.
Right. If only, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And it's a good source of fiber.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll say there's maybe, and every vitamin company now has a DIM, every single one of them. So it's not hard to find at a typical grocery store. So, I mean, I give it to everyone. There are some people, because it is cruciferous vegetables, that may have like 5% of people may have a little GI upset from it. So if that's the case, saw palmetto or zinc citrate are great options as well. In place of that.
Interesting. That's cool.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard lots about DIM, many things about DIM, good
Yes.
things. So that's
Yes.
good. And I know the nutritionist that used to work at the studio with us, she used to put people on that when they needed
God,
it.
yes.
So,
I
yeah.
put everyone on it.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell everyone.
That's right. That's right. So then if we talk about testosterone, so typically in our 30s, we're making testosterone. Every woman, every man, we all make different amounts of it, right? You have those friends that are like, oh, I want to have sex every day. And then you have friends that are like, ugh,
Right.
don't want to ever do that.
Yeah.
So we all start at a different, a different amount, but typically around 40 to 50, women will start noticing that their testosterone just falls to the ground. What you'll notice when that happens is the brain fog, the anxiety or depression. It's that, like, this is my medical term for it. I feel meh. I don't know what it is. I just feel like there's a cloud over me. It's harder to find joy. I can't deal with stressful situations like I used to. All those things start happening. That's when we all get put on antidepressants, right? And then the other things that happen are you're hot flashing at night. I'm waking at night, I feel heat. You could be totally sweated out, or just covers on, covers off, covers on all night. I also joke that I'm going to rent the convention center in Colorado between like 1 and 3 in the morning, because every woman with low testosterone is awake between 1 and 3 in the morning. So we might as well get together and do something. Right.
Yeah. So true.
And then, so sleep is disturbed, you're hot flashing at night, you can't remember anything. And then your libido is just bleh, it disappears. You have no desire. When you do have sex, you notice that it takes longer to reach orgasm, or orgasms aren't as good as they used to be. You may have vaginal dryness, all of that fun stuff. And then the final thing is muscle mass. I like to say we get fluffier, right? So we notice, I go to the gym and I work out, but I can't run as far as I used to. Or after I work out, my muscles are sore. I need to recover for a few more days than I used to. My joints hurt. I have times where I get out of bed and my husband's like, did you age 10 years? Because I'm like, oh, it hurts.
Yeah.
And it's because testosterone is the feeding, it's the food for your muscles. So when your testosterone goes down, you can't make muscle mass anymore. So we notice that we get a little fluffier. We lose our muscle mass. We don't have the endurance or recovery we used to. Your joints hurt more because testosterone, keeping those muscles strong, keeps those joints strong. And then the negative to losing muscle mass is muscle mass burns more calories, right? So if we lose our lean muscle mass, all of a sudden we're like, where'd that 5-10 pounds come from? Right. I didn't change how I ate. I haven't changed my exercise. I don't understand where this is coming from. And it's universal. It's almost every woman.
I hear it all the time. Yes.
That's right.
I didn't do anything, but I gained 10 pounds.
That's right. And so you're losing that muscle mass. You're not burning as many calories. You may say, now I'm cold all the time. I'm losing my hair, all of these fun things. So that's the loss of testosterone that starts happening. And there's things that we can do to help build testosterone back in women. There are so many options for it. There are some good natural ones. DHEA is a good kind of starting block, I like to say. I look at it as the miracle grow for testosterone. Because if you look at how we make our hormones, cholesterol is the starting block. Then you make progesterone, you make cortisol, which is our fight or flight hormone. You make DHEA, which then turns to testosterone, which then turns to estrogen. So DHEA is a good place to start because it's putting Miracle-Gro in your testosterone garden. But I feel like after a while, if you don't have any flowers in the garden, Miracle-Gro is not going to do anything, right? It's just going into the dirt.
Right.
So most women will end up going, okay, now I actually need to plant new flowers. I need to get some testosterone in the garden. Okay. The other piece about testosterone loss, I have a lot of women come into me that are, 30s, 40s, and they'll say, my husband and I got divorced, or my parents passed away, or some life event happened that was so stressful, and they never regained their ability to come up with words. They started night sweats. They started losing muscle mass, no libido. We women make our testosterone on our adrenal glands. So lucky us if we get totally stressed out, and I'm pretty sure there are no women in the world in their 40s and 50s that aren't in adrenal fatigue.
Right.
That we lose our testosterone because our adrenals are kaput, and so we don't make as much testosterone. Men, on the other hand, make their testosterone in their testicles. So I joke that you could like cut off their leg and go, you want to have sex? And they'd be like, okay, right? Like, it doesn't matter how stressed they are, they'll still be willing to partake.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's testosterone we have found. When I first started doing this in like 2000, we gave every woman estrogen, progesterone. Testosterone for women, no way. We will not do that. But we have found over the years that testosterone is actually safer. Many studies have shown that it helps prevent breast cancer. It helps keep your bones strong like estrogen does. It also helps with the other things like the libido, the energy, the muscle mass, all those things that estrogen do not deal with. And if you looked at a chart of how estrogen's made, like I said, you make testosterone, and then testosterone aromatizes or turns into estrogen. So we have found that if you give women testosterone, they get a lot of benefit from it, but then they also make estrogen naturally from it. So your body is making its own estrogen. So I'm not increasing your risk of blood clot. I'm not increasing your risk of breast cancer. And in fact, I work with a few docs in the Denver area that do breast cancer patients. And after 3 or 4 years of being breast cancer free, she then sends them to me, and we give them testosterone because they have no quality of life. Their testosterone is gone because they've been on tamoxifen and all of that stuff. Right. And so we give them testosterone because that does not increase their risk like estrogen would.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. That's
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've kind of like talked all about, as we've gone through, you've been talking about the hormones and stuff. So if you want to just kind of explain what exactly a bioidentical hormone is.
Of course.
Yeah. And then just like how you kind of explain a little bit how you use them, like where you would specifically use them when it comes to them.
The nice thing is these days there's so many ways to get them. And if someone's not ready for bioidentical hormones, there are some great natural ways as well. There's so many, black cohosh and maca and L-theanine. I mean, I could go through the whole list. So there are some great ones that you can do prior to. But if you get to the point where you want bioidentical hormones, what bioidentical hormones mean is it's biologically identical to your hormones. So if you took your hormone out and you took this hormone out and looked at them, they'd be mirror images of each other. It's funny, I'll have people go, oh, I'm on natural hormones. And you're like, well, how they make bioidentical hormones is they actually start with a wild yam. That's why if you go to the store to find like a progesterone cream, it'll be called wild yam cream or yam cream. So they start with the wild yam. I wish we could all just like build a farm and make wild yams and all us women just walking around eating wild yams, but it wouldn't do the trick.
Right.
What they do is they take the wild yam compound, they take it to a lab and they convert it, they tweak it just a little bit. So they change some of the carbons, the hydrogens on the molecule to look biologically identical to your progesterone, your testosterone, your estrogen. So that's what bioidentical means versus, you hear about like Premarin. It's pregnant horse mare urine. So they take the urine from pregnant horses. It has a receptor on it that looks very similar to our estrogen receptors in our body. So it attaches to that receptor. It upregulates the estrogen in our body, but who knows what that rest of that molecule is doing?
Right.
Because it doesn't look anything like our estrogen. So that's why bioidentical hormones, that's why I use bioidentical hormones. And many people feel like it's a better, safer option. That's my belief.
Right. Yes.
So that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, okay,
So,
cool.
Yeah. So the nice thing is, you ask the different routes of it. What they do is they then take the formula they made. So say they made estrogen out of it. They make it into a powder. Then what you can do is you can take that powder and make a pill form. You can take that powder and make a sublingual form. You can take that powder and put it into a patch that releases itself. You can take that powder and make a cream out of it. You can make an oil out of it, or you can make a pellet out of it. And what a pellet is just it's autoclaved and heated, that powder, to make like a little tiny, it looks like a hamster pellet, a hamster food piece. And that gets inserted under your skin into your adipose tissue and releases over time. So there's so many different routes that you can use. And I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, I can only get it through compounding pharmacies. There are some bioidentical options that you can get at your local grocery store pharmacy. And it's just knowing what's available and out there. I tend not to like oral hormones. It's my bias, but we have something in our stomachs called sex hormone binding globulin. It binds our sex hormones. So when you take an oral estrogen or an oral testosterone, it hits your stomach, it gets bound up, and you pee it out. So you have really expensive urine. Okay, which may explain why then in our drinking water, our young girls are drinking the water and then they're getting their periods at 10 years old. Right. But so I don't love the orals as much. I feel like, and you can measure SHBG, or sex hormone binding globulin. It's not the cheapest lab test to do, but if that level is elevated, it's usually a woman on birth control pills or taking oral hormones. So that's like for men. I always joke, like if you watch TV and you see that commercial of like the old baseball player who's at the gym, and he has all these women around him and they're like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, I take GNC, Testa, something. It makes me all sexy again. And I will admit, Doug Flutie is in some of those commercials, and I went to Boston College and Doug Flutie is a Boston College guy. So I'm a little embarrassed about it. Yeah. Nonetheless, it doesn't do the trick because it's oral. So you're going to just pee it out. So it's more of a placebo effect.
I've heard that over and over, that, yeah, it's just not the best way to do it.
That's right. And the other thing is, you take something oral, it has to process through your liver. It has to process through your stomach. It has so many things it needs to process through that we find that there's more side effect to it. So that's why, for example, estrogen, you tend to find that an estrogen patch or an estrogen cream, or, a sublingual, which means that it dissolves under your tongue and goes into your bloodstream under, you have such a rich blood supply under your tongue, that those are the better options and have a less profile of breast cancers or things like that. They're better for you.
Right. So there's many different options, and I suppose it just depends on the person, what they want, and have you found that sometimes you've started someone on some, like, let's say you started with a sublingual, but it didn't work as well, so you had to try
100%. And that's like what I come back to saying, there's so many of the med spas out there that I kind of call fast food med spas, because they think everyone is exactly the same. They're like, next. Right. And it's like, no, we're not all the same. Some women want to have a libido. Some women don't want to have a libido. So, there's so many things that have happened in our history, our past, socially, emotionally, that you have to tailor it to every woman and what they are looking for to get out of this and how they're feeling. So, I don't like the one size fits all approach. You really got to tailor it.
That's what I love about you for that.
That's right. And the other thing I say to women is, it's so funny. I have women come to me that have 50 supplements. They literally throw them on my desk and go, these are what I take. And I go, do they help? And they're like, I don't know. Yeah. And I'm like, do you even know what they are? And they're like, no, someone told me to take them, and I'm spending thousands of dollars a month on this. Right. I have learned to become what I call an onion peeler versus chucking an onion at you. I want to do one thing at a time. Yeah. I want to check your thyroid. I want to make sure your vitamin D is good. I mean, vitamin D, I can't say enough about it. Check your vitamin D, because Most providers don't. And, you know, if you have osteoporosis, back in the day, we gave everyone calcium, 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 drink your milk, do this, do that. And you're like, they all got kidney stones, they all got gout, they all got all of these things. And it's because calcium cannot get into your bones unless you have vitamin D. Vitamin D is like the key that opens the door to let the calcium in. So the biggest things for your bones are vitamin D, and the range they're going to give you on your labs are 30 to 100. If you're at 30, I'm sorry, you're low.
Right.
Those reference ranges on labs, and this goes for testosterone, this goes for vitamin D. I mean, I'll have women that'll check testosterone and the range is 3 to 70. The range I like for women is 1 to 200. Right. And so if someone's at 3, I'm sorry, that woman cannot remember her own name.
Yep.
She has no muscle left in her body, and
Right.
she's like a puddle all night long.
Right.
So how they come up with those levels, for example, testosterone, they take women age 18 to 100. They did it back in late 70s, 18 to 100. They check their testosterone levels. They don't care how they feel, what's going on in their lives. They find the average, they put it on the piece of paper. Well, every woman over 40 is pretty much almost at 0 in testosterone. So the whole range is just swayed down here.
Right.
Vitamin D, the range they give is 30 to 100. The range I like is about 60 to 80, 90, something like that. So look at your vitamin D, make sure you're at 60 to 80.
Right.
And I could go off about vitamin D3 and take it with vitamin K, because
Right.
but vitamin D is so important. Thyroid is so important. It's when our hormones go, we're all one system. One thing goes, the other things start going. So do a thorough look at your thyroid. Don't just do a TSH.
Right.
That's all primary cares do, is a TSH. And I have women come in and they're like, I'm losing all my hair and I'm constipated and I need to nap at 3 o'clock and I can't lose a pound. My hands and feet are cold all the time, but my TSH was fine. So my primary care just told me to move on. You're like, oh my God.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So look at a T3, look at a T4. And the other thing I say is, if you're on levothyroxine or Synthroid for your thyroid, all it is T4. All it is you're taking the storage form of thyroid. You are more than likely not getting any of the active form of thyroid, which is T3. So I have women come in on levothyroxine or Synthroid. They've been on it for 20 years and they still feel like crap. There's so many things. There's so many thyroid medications out there that have the active and the storage, a T3 and a T4. And when those women come in and they're like, I feel horrible and I'm exhausted and I'm on levothyroxine, I'm like, it's an easy one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to change you. You're going to call me next week and you're going to be like, I love you.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, that was a good one. I
Right.
have to think.
Right. The easy ones are good. Yeah.
That's right. Sometimes you got to, throw me a bone.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. I love it. Oh, so much good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could talk forever.
That's right.
So the very last question that I kind of want to ask, like, let's say someone came to you, because I kind of want to know your process, like what you would do, what you would. So let's say they just came to you and like, okay, I'm a mess, I'm falling apart, this is all happening. What steps do you take to get them from A to C?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we have them fill out a history of, we have like a check sheet of all the common symptoms and you sit there and you check them, and it's funny at the end, women and men, because I do both of them, are like, man, I didn't think I was this bad, but all their checks are like on this side of the paper, which is like bad versus mild.
Right.
The other thing that we do is, so I actually spend an hour with a new patient. I don't want this 5-minute, that's all you have, because you have to, use insurance. And I promise I'll give you a script before you leave because I have to make your visit worth it. That's not what you're going to get. I'll spend an hour with the patient. I want to know about your family. I want to know about your history. I want to know, your emotional state. I want to know all your symptoms. Then every new patient that I have, we do a blood work panel. Sometimes insurance covers it, sometimes they don't. Reason being, why would insurance cover checking hormones, especially testosterone on women? Because that's prevention. We don't do that kind of stuff. Right. So I have a really low self-pay price. The labs give me a lower price and I just pass it on to you. I don't make money off labs. I think it's ridiculous to make money off labs. So we do a lab panel. It's going to look at your blood counts. It's going to look at, are you anemic? It's going to look at your vitamin B12, your vitamin D, full thyroid panel, full hormone panel, because I want to get an idea of what's happening, right? And then at the appointment, I'll sit down with you for an hour and discuss all the symptoms you're having, everything you've tried and not tried. We go over the labs. And then honestly, my job is to educate you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to say, these are the things, this is why this is happening. And I think that's the most important thing, is for women to understand, and men, because men lose testosterone too. Why is this happening? This is totally normal. There's things we can do about it. We can do preventative medicine, keep you healthy, keep your bones strong. Hormones have been shown to decrease risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. They have shown to decrease risk of cardiac issues. They have shown to decrease risk of bone mass loss. So there's so many things behind the curtain that, you know, aren't just what you're feeling up front. There's a lot of things that we can do to prevent as well with hormones. So I just spend that hour with patients kind of going over all of that. And then at the end, we have a plan, right? And I write the plan down because, well, I don't remember anything, so I assume you don't remember anything. So I give homework, is what I like to call it. And then you decide, what do I want to do? Is this right? Where do I want to start? And then we keep in touch and keep tweaking it until we find where we want to be.
I love that. I love that journey. I love, like I said, I mentioned a little bit earlier that the hardest part is women want to do what everybody else is doing, but they're not. You can't do exactly what your friend is doing because they're different. They have a different lifestyle. Everything's different in their body.
It's like with weight loss. Two friends will do the same program, and then you're like, she lost all this weight and I didn't lose a pound. And you're like, well, you're not the same person. Right.
Exactly.
Or the damn man loses all the weight.
Yeah. No matter what. It's not fair.
I know.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, this, like I said, this has been great. So I love all the information. And like I said, we could probably talk forever. So we may have to do this again, or probably will do this again. We'll just, I can find out what people want to know more about. And
send me questions. I have no problem. Send me questions. I'll reply to them because I know there's a lot out there.
Yeah. And that's the most important part. Like when I posted about this and I was going to do this, I'm like, we want to educate you as a woman to know, so you can understand and don't think you're crazy, but also knowing that you can get help. You can get, you can feel better. You don't have to be in your 40s and 50s and feel like you're 80.
That's right.
And you can feel like be 80 and feel like you're 50. So, I mean,
well, if you think about it, we didn't live past 30, 40, 50 back in the day. Right. So this is a new-ish medicine because now we're living half of our life post-menopausal these days.
Right. So, and you want to feel amazing.
That's right.
I mean, I do.
That's right. Me too. You want to feel and look amazing.
Exactly. All that. Yes. 100%. So if women want to reach out to you, like, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? I can put your, the link to your website and everything, but if you have some information you want to share.
Yeah, so my office is in very South Boulder. That way, people don't have to drive through Boulder if they don't live in Boulder. But my office is called Boulder Whole Health. It's myself, and I actually, about a few months ago, brought in another nurse practitioner named Cindy, who's awesome, who actually trained under me when she was getting her nurse practitioning degree, but she also has a degree in functional nutrition, which is really nice. And we are in the office Monday through Thursday. Friday, the office is closed, but you can leave messages. And yeah, we'd be happy to get you in, talk about pricing. And, otherwise, if they have questions that are just super simple, and they want to ask you, or and you could ask me. Okay. I mean, I want to educate women. I'm not in this to make millions. I want women to be happy. I want them to feel good. Because that's what I want, right? That's what you want. That's what we all want.
And it's hard when you do see the people that are suffering. It's like, you don't have to go through that. You don't have to do that.
That's exactly right.
It doesn't have to be that
exactly right.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I'll let you get back to the rest of your evening. And I appreciate you taking this time to educate us even more. So thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye. You too.
Bye.